Testing, perfect. All right, I think we're ready to get started. Should we start, or we want to give it a few more minutes? A few more minutes. Okay. Cool. All right, we'll get started. Nice to meet y'all. I'm Ron. It's super weird to talk with a microphone in a small and intimate room, but I was told we need it for the recording, so I'll try to stick to it. I'll start with introducing myself, and I'll say that these sessions, these are so much more interesting and fun if they're interactive and if you guys have had experience with these tools and give your background. So kind of don't just rely on me. I'd love for you guys to share. We can even pass the microphone around. We have plenty of time today, and I think just makes it so much more fun. So shortly about myself, this is going to work. Perfect. Nope. 1 second. I think only, oh, there we go. Sorry, 1 second. Okay, getting a hold of the clicker. I'm Ron. I founded Entitle, which was a startup we started 3 years ago, focused on cloud access management. And all the open source tools that I'm going to talk about today are ones that we used internally. We tried to integrate as part of our product. We used for our own security. We take our cloud security obviously very seriously. And so we've looked a lot into what we could do to make things better. I'm sure you've probably heard of some of these, and so keen to hear your feedback. Entitle was acquired 4 months ago by BeyondTrust, who you might be familiar with. We are a leader in privileged access management. And it's been really interesting because Entitle has become kind of a huge part of the cloud strategy of BeyondTrust. I started my journey in cybersecurity in the Army. I was a security researcher for many years, and I started Entitle basically straight out of the Army with the idea that kind of cloud was what was really needed to be tackled. I joke, I feel like a lot of times people talk about what they do in their free time and kind of what are the hobbies, and I'm still trying to figure that out. In startups, you don't really have a lot of hobbies, and so if you have any ideas, happy to hear it. Talks like this always start with an awkward quote, and so I needed to put one on my slides as well. But basically the importance of access management, I don't think you're here because you probably understand the importance. And frankly, this dude right here has made it really hard for all of us, right? I feel like they could have done a better job in making it a bit easier, but just the complexity of obviously enterprise solutions has made it really hard to manage a very wide set of infrastructure and applications and servers and so on. And so there's two sides to the equation, right? There's the engineer who, obviously what we care about engineers is efficiency and get shit done and roll things out to production, but the incentives aren't totally aligned in terms of security and engineering. Engineering cares about getting shit done. Security is sometimes seen as the one that's kind of holding things back. And being able to reconcile those two has been, I think, the constant struggle of security teams everywhere because, as security teams, we don't want to be the bad guys. But on the other hand, we have a lot of responsibility to the business in terms of making sure that the environments are secure. And so the recurring theme is obviously kind of shift left, right? That whole idea of how do we empower engineers to be able to make security conscious decisions in the daily basis, in the workflow of, the daily workflow of kind of what we do in product development. And so there are a few open source tools that we identified as making it easier, both for the security engineering side of things, but also from the actual developer side of things. The last thing I want to say is obviously creating the actual policies is different in cloud environments. So you have AWS, you have Azure, you have GCP, and so it's one thing if you're in one cloud environment, it's different if you're in multiple, and maintaining that knowledge across a wide set of infrastructures can be challenging, and it's true not only for the kind of satellite services of AWS, call it, but it could also be, for example, Snowflake that you have in a different environment, right, and a lot of other infrastructure. So all this is probably not really new for you guys. So let's just jump straight into an example of we'll start with kind of the problem and what we're trying to solve with the open access management solution. You'll notice, I think the biggest thing that you'll see here is obviously the foo bar, right? Like the ability, the policy itself gives access to a very wide set of resources. And the question is, what does this actually give access to? What buckets are included here? And that is a surprisingly complex question and answer because you really have to visualize the whole cloud environment to understand which of the buckets would answer this policy. And that's exactly what Aya is focused on. So Aya is basically a Neo4j, actually fairly simple visualization tool that just overlays, scans your cloud environment, takes all of, creates a catalog of all the resources, basically starts doing this pattern matching that AWS do themselves behind the scenes, but in a nice graphical UI. And there are a few different uses for this. One is just nice to kind of, when you create a policy, to take effect, to understand what it's going to take effect of. But the reason that Aya was created to begin with was what actually Beatrice likes to call pass to privilege. The idea is that maybe a certain policy doesn't give admin rights to begin with, but that policy gives access to a server, that service has access rights to something else. And so being able to walk that graph and understand we started with this somewhat simple, maybe list buckets, but we ended up with an admin role in a different service. And being able to understand that transitivity is challenging. And that's what Aya is really focused on. So for example, you could filter on a lot of different things. You can see kind of here at the top AWS policies and groups and accounts and focus. You can start your search from a specific identity. That identity can be a specific user. It can be a machine account as well. I'm going backwards. I'm gonna get finally at some point I'm gonna get used to this clicker. Cool. The thing that I was hoping that I would do, and it doesn't, and I will say this so that maybe one of you guys take the responsibility, is it'd be amazing if you could overlay Access Analyzer, AWS's own internal tool of identifying which access is in use, and overlay that on top of this graphical UI, right? And then you just have like a really easy graph of like what's in use, what's not in use. That hasn't been done. Aya is actually somewhat of a dead project, but it still works because kind of nothing has really changed. But in terms of like where I'd want this to go, that's kind of the classic, at least the most straightforward thing that I was thinking. Second thing is AirIAM. Who here has used AirIAM by any chance? No, okay. So AirIAM was it is an open source project that's developed by a startup called Bridge Crew, to give them credit. And what it does is to put very naively, it's a linter for AWS policies in Terraform. So you can kind of integrate this into your GitOps policy. And what it'll do is it'll identify anomalies and security risks in the IAC that you roll out for the permission structure. So it'll identify, it has, basically what they did is they researched and created a wide set of dictionaries, a very large dictionary of security risks, classic security risks, like, you create a role but it's never in use, or that's kind of more of a hygiene thing, but there's also kind of more of enforcing policies, showing which buckets are open to the public, things like that. So I think I have an example here. What's cool about it is, and I can't remember if this is in the open source aspect or not, I'm pretty sure it is, but excuse me. What's cool about it is it also creates the remediation PR as well. And so you take those recommendations, it automatically creates the remediation. You probably don't apply them automatically because that can be hell, but it does give kind of the place to start. So here you can see the demo. It's really easy to run. You install it real quick. Let's get through this real quick. Perfect. So you can see find unused, and there's a threshold. The threshold by default is 90 days, and you can start seeing the recommendations. 4 users are not in use. 27 roles are not in use. 1 group is redundant because it has no members. 26 policies are redundant. So it kind of has these set of checks that it runs, and then you can create the recommendation as well of what it wants to do for remediation. Let's wait until it finishes. Perfect. I think that's the end. So I just took a screenshot of what we saw already, so we can maybe take a second to go through this together. This is just a set, as I mentioned, it has a set of checks and balances that it runs, policies that are not in use. You can see that is not using the privileges. This actually does use Access Analyzer. It goes through the CloudTrail logs and identifies what's been in use, what hasn't been in use. And again, kind of take that with a grain of salt, but I think it is a good way to at least to put that as the first layer of defense. Perfect. Perfect. Here you can see an example of what it would suggest as remediation. So you can see a Lambda function has full control over DynamoDB, and what it'll do is it'll even recommend the specific resource that is in use, so kind of refining that role to make sure that it's covering only the specific resource. Third problem. This one is actually really cool. This is an open source project. I'll jump forward real quick. PolicyCentry, and then I'll go back to the problem. PolicyCentry is a really cool open source project by Salesforce, and the recurring challenge that you'll see in a lot of different cloud environments is that the set of actions is very detailed and very granular, which you could say is good from a least privilege perspective. But because it's so challenging to define what are the actions that you want to do on a specific bucket or server, a lot of times engineers will go and say, just give me everything, because we don't want the errors, right? And so you can see here as an example, like the action is, there we go, yeah. The action is everything, S3 star, and then the resources all are the stars, right? A very generic policy. And ideally what we'd want to do is we want to refine that to get to a smaller list of actions so that we're not including, for example, making it public and other things that could be somewhat sensitive. The challenge here, the reason that engineers tend to do this is because defining all these actions, I mean, I'm sure you've had experience with this, like it's a very, very, very exhaustive list. And so starting to nitpick and say, this is what I don't need is often challenging. What Salesforce did is they basically created a catalog, and I'm going to jump forward and then I'll go back to the demo here. So what they did is they created a dictionary behind the scenes, and they mapped all the different actions to 5 different access levels: read, list, write, and a few others, and obviously the resource type as well. And so what essentially they did is they made it really easy, and I'll jump back to their demo, but they made it really easy to write policies, because all you have to do is define which ARN and what you want to do. You want to read, you want to list, and it'll create the policy automatically. So here you can see in Nano, they're opening it up, creating a YAML. This YAML is a very simple settings file of what I mentioned earlier. Like, this is the ARN, this is the action that I want to take, and then it'll spit out the policy. I think here you can see, I have a policy here somewhere. Yeah, perfect. So here you can see kind of the input. This is what you would put in the Nano, very simplified a bit, but you can see it's read access to this ARN, very straightforward, and this would be its output, where it automatically took the actions, set the actions that are associated with read, and then obviously put in the resource itself. Cool. IAM Live is interesting because it automates a lot of the process. So everything we saw up until now has kind of made it a bit easier to just visualize the tools that are in place. IAM Live takes a different approach. IAM Live takes the error message that you get from executing any action, and basically the input that it gets is an error message. You can give it anywhere. You can copy paste it into the system. It takes the error message and it creates a policy that remediates the error message that you got. And so if I failed, for example, listing buckets, it will create a policy that gives me access to list buckets. That correlation is obviously super awesome as an engineer when you're just working, and instead of saying, hey, I want star all the time, this will kind of create the automated least privilege policy that solves for the error that you are getting at the end system. The user experience here is pretty cool because it usually runs in proxy mode. And so you can literally put this between simple HTTP proxy, you put it between you and your AWS console. And so when you type AWS LS, it'll automatically create this policy. So here you can see, I'm gonna jump forward real quick. Here you can see describe regions. I'm running this policy, describe regions, and it'll automatically define what is the action that I need to take on which resources. I think I have, it's not running the GIF, but at least you've got the idea in general. Anyone used IAM Live in general? Okay, cool. The last one, GCP Permissions Cloud. First of all, they have an awesome domain. They got the domain, is it here? Permissions.cloud, which I thought that was pretty cool. What they did is obviously GCP roles are also challenging, and so this is actually a static website. And so you can see that different engineering teams took different approaches and what's the best way to visualize the access management the access management roles. Whereas earlier you saw Salesforce took an approach where you give the set of dictionary, you give the read action, and then it defines the granular actions that you want to take. Here, it's more of a website, and actually we can go through this. I think we'll go through this in a second together, open just GCP Cloud, look through it. But this is literally a website where you can go and you can search specific actions and see what is associated with that action. The downside of this is that it's not specific to your environment, so there's no integration with your personal GCP environment. But from a kind of learning perspective and understanding what are the roles that are available, it is pretty awesome. Last one is one that we developed for our own internal use originally and then ended up outsourcing. And to do this, I think I'll talk a little bit shortly about what are the challenges when it comes to accessing the cloud environment and then what we've done to make it easier for ourselves internally. Granted, it's not an open source tool that we've marketed. It's something that we kind of used for our own internal use, but hopefully it could be useful for you guys as well. So when you want to access a resource in your own VPC, there's kind of different levels of challenges that are out there. There's the first level, which is the actual connectivity, right? It's behind some sort. Its own kind of internal environment. You, as an engineer, on your NPC, how do you actually get to the point where you have a socket connection to that service? The second part is the authentication to the service itself, right? You have an SSH key, whatever. Third part is the authorization, which is usually where PAM tools come in, and then the last part is the governance. And what I always hated historically about large PAM tools that a lot of teams often end up rolling out is one of the first compelling events that leads teams to roll out PAM tools is the connectivity aspect. I think one of the biggest reasons, who here has heard of, for example, Teleport or StrongDM? Familiar? Cool. So like one of the biggest reasons that people roll out these massive tools that are complex to deploy is a very narrow challenge of how do I actually get to the point where I have connectivity to the end service. And that is something that cloud infrastructures have actually kind of solved on their own. So the naive way to solve this is have a Bastion server kind of as a jump server, right? And then you connect with that Bastion, and Bastion connects to the end resource. And AWS have SSM, which is their own kind of internal platform on how to run commands on authenticated commands on Linux servers at the end system. And so we've kind of wrapped that SSM tool in a way that enables you to connect to the end resource, utilizing the authentication of AWS itself. So instead of having to create or deploy a full ZTNA solution, you can rely on the out-of-the-box aspect that AWS and GCP do as well. The out-of-the-box services that they provide, and you can utilize that to take care of the connectivity. So what Beam does to begin with, going the wrong way. So what Beam does is it starts with listing what are the resources that are available to connect to. So just goes and scrapes the cloud environment. And this is obviously dynamic, right? Kubernetes clusters, they move, they change. And so you start with seeing what's available, and behind the scenes, we've already mapped which Bastion servers service which end systems, which servers. And so when you decide that you want to connect to, for example, this Kubernetes cluster, then we will behind the scenes go and know which Bastion server services that system, will connect you to that Bastion server, and now you'll have a session that connects you to that environment. One of the other things that are convenient about this is if you have multiple environments, staging, QA, whatever, then it makes it really easy to manage all those connections in kind of one CLI. I'm talking about a user experience perspective, right? Because this could be done already out of the box with what AWS offers. It's more of wrapping this in a kind of easy to use user experience. We want to expand this into GCP and Azure as well, just haven't gotten around to that. And so if you guys encounter this challenge internally, would love to collaborate with you guys on that. So here, you can see basically identifies the databases, and then you run the command and it connects you to it. I ran quickly through this because I was hoping that we'd have the opportunity to talk through open source tools that you guys have used and make this a bit more interactive on what things you've used inside your cloud environments, and kind of hoping to share that with the team. So anyone want to be the first brave one? Perfect.
Hi, my name is Timur.
From where?
From Tier Mobility here in Berlin. One of the things we use, it's not quite the same from what you described, but we use OPAs to analyze our Terraform plans and identify if there's any potentially harmful things that developers might be creating, like, IAM user. We don't want them to create IAM users because we don't want to have any steady credentials, or IAM role with the administrator access and stuff like that. Yeah, this is one of the things we do.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Who else wants to go? Going once. Alrighty, then we can keep this informal and take the mic off, and we can just continue the discussion afterwards. Thank you guys very much for joining me today.